Hi, you're on the Reddit Confessions channel. Rena dropped the coffee mug when I said it. It hit the edge of the kitchen counter, shattered, and for a split second, we both stared at the floor, like the silence could glue the porcelain back together. I want you to admit it, I said again. My voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. You took his side because it was easier than facing what you've been doing behind mine. She didn't speak. Not right away. Her fingers were still trembling from the mug, or from what I said. Either way, I finally saw it. That crack in her armor. Let me back up. Not far, just a few days. It started with a text she accidentally sent me. One of those messages meant for someone else. It said, "Don't worry, he'll believe whatever I tell him. He always does." I stared at it for 10 minutes. I didn't respond. I just sat there, rereading the words while the room around me got colder. I didn't confront her that night. Instead, I waited. I watched. And when the fight at her office happened, I knew exactly what to look for. She called me that afternoon, breathless and frustrated. "Mason's losing it again," she said. "He thinks you've been snooping around." I hadn't, but I could tell by the panic in her voice. She was more afraid of his opinion than mine. So I did something I never do. I showed up. She wasn't expecting me. Her boss wasn't either. The three of us ended up in a conference room where Mason talked over me like I wasn't even there, and she let him. He accused me of undermining their project, of being jealous, of getting in her head at home. I waited for her to correct him. She didn't. Instead, she crossed her arms and said, "Miles, this isn't helping." That's when I laughed, actually laughed, because in that moment I realized it wasn't about the fight. It was about what she wanted to be true. So, I said nothing else. I walked out. And now, 2 days later, I was standing in the kitchen, watching her face as the truth she thought she could bury finally floated to the surface. My one sentence, just one, had collapsed the entire performance. "You sided with him, Rena, because you were never done with him to begin with." And the look on her face? That was the moment I knew everything would change. Rena knelt down to pick up the broken shards of the mug, but I could tell her thoughts were somewhere else. Her hands were shaking too much. Still, she didn't deny it. Not right away. That was the strangest part. If someone accused you of betraying them, wouldn't you immediately defend yourself, raise your voice, swear on something? But she didn't. Instead, she whispered, "It's not what you think." I almost laughed again. "You know what's wild?" I said. "I haven't even told you what I think. I just said one sentence, and look at you." She dropped the piece in her hand. I flinched when it clinked. She stood up slowly and stared at me like I was the one who broke something more important than a coffee cup. "You're twisting this," she said finally, voice cracking a bit, though she tried to sound composed. "Mason and I are friends. He's been there for me when you haven't." There it was, that lazy little justification. The same line you'd hear in some cheap drama. I could feel the rage bubbling up, but I kept it under control. Not because I'm noble, because I wanted her to keep talking, to say more, to give herself away. "When exactly was I not there for you?" I asked. Silence. She opened her mouth, but then paused. Her eyes shifted like she was trying to scroll through her mental file cabinet for an excuse that could hold up. "You don't listen," she said. "You've been distracted, obsessed with your own stuff. It's like I've been on autopilot and you didn't even notice." I shook my head. "I noticed everything. I just didn't think you'd be the kind of person who weaponizes neglect to justify deception." She recoiled like I slapped her. Good. Because I meant every word. I was done filtering. I had played the soft, apologetic husband for too long. The guy who tiptoed around her moods, her late nights, her unreadable silences. I had accepted way too much under the banner of "she's stressed" or "work is crazy right now." But the truth was, she had been choosing Mason over and over, with every unanswered message, every sudden meeting, every time she laughed at his jokes louder than mine. "Did you sleep with him?" I asked. Just like that. No warning. She stared at the floor. That was my answer. "No," she whispered after a long pause. But it was one of those no's that sounds like a maybe covered in shame. "We just talked a lot. Talked. That cursed word. That's always how it starts, right? Emotional intimacy disguised as harmless conversation. Confessions over drinks. Jokes that get too personal. Late night texting that turns into inside jokes you're not part of. That's what burns the most. Not even the physical betrayal, but the erosion of what you thought was sacred. I walked past her and opened the fridge. I needed to do something, anything, just to avoid looking at her. "You should stay somewhere else tonight," I said flatly. That got her attention. "What?" "You heard me. Go to your parents, a hotel. Or better yet, ask Mason to help you find a place. He seems pretty good at inserting himself into lives he doesn't belong in." She stepped toward me, but I didn't flinch. "You're overreacting," she said. "We can talk about this." "We are. Right now. And it's the clearest I've ever been." She didn't argue after that. She picked up her phone, walked into the bedroom, and didn't come out for almost an hour. When she finally did, she had a duffel bag over her shoulder, and her expression was unreadable. As the door shut behind her, I sank to the kitchen floor, surrounded by shattered porcelain and the thick air of everything that hadn't been said yet. I didn't sleep that night, not even for a second. I stayed on the couch, barely blinking, the silence of the apartment pressing down on me like a weighted blanket soaked in regret. You'd think after someone walks out, things would feel clearer, like a storm passing. But this was worse. It was the kind of quiet that doesn't bring peace, just questions that multiply in your head until you're arguing with no one at 4 a.m. Around sunrise, I wandered into the bedroom and stood there staring at the bed, still neatly made on her side, untouched. Her perfume still lingered on the pillow. I should have burned it, but instead, I sat down and let my head fall into my hands. How long had I been living like this? How many lies had I let slide because I didn't want to be controlling or clingy or one of those guys? It's not like I had evidence, not the kind that you can print out or wave in someone's face, but it was the slow buildup, the shift in tone, the inside jokes she never explained, the way her eyes lit up when she said his name, but went dull when she looked at me. That's the kind of betrayal you can't photograph, but you feel it like frostbite on your soul. I texted her once that morning, "Me, are you safe?" She replied 2 hours later, "Rena, I'm at my sister's. I need space. Please respect that. No apology, no guilt. Just space." I left the phone face down on the coffee table and stared at the ceiling. It was funny, in a sick kind of way, how someone could damage your trust and then act like you were the one who needed to adjust. Like you were the burden. That was the game she played so well, turning herself into the victim before I could even articulate the wound. Later that afternoon, I made the mistake of checking her Instagram. It was set to private, but we still followed each other. She hadn't posted anything, but Mason had. A group shot at some trendy rooftop lounge, bright lighting, fake laughs. And there she was, far in the background, blurry but unmistakable. Same denim jacket, same smile I hadn't seen in weeks. She didn't look like someone spiraling or regretful. She looked free. I stared at the photo for at least 5 minutes. Zoomed in, zoomed out. Like somehow I'd misread it. Like maybe it wasn't her. But it was. And then something even worse happened. Its eye scrolled to the comments. Mason, this crew therapy. Rena, facts. That was it. That was my unraveling. She didn't just leave. She mocked the idea of working through things, publicly, with him, after a 10-year marriage, after everything we built. That one emoji, the laughing face, it hit harder than any confession could have. Because it wasn't guilt. It was entertainment. My hands were shaking again. I wasn't even angry, not yet. I was just hollow. Like someone had emptied me out and left the shell sitting on a couch trying to breathe through a thick fog of disbelief. That night, I made a decision. If she wanted space, I'd give it to her. But not the way she expected. Not the quiet, sulking kind of space that begged her to come back. Number? I was going to peel back the curtain. If she thought I was just going to sit still and accept the rewritten version of our story, the one where I was the problem and he was the savior, she was in for something she never saw coming. I always assumed the people closest to us would tell the truth if things ever got bad enough. That at least one person in the circle would slip up or feel guilty or look me in the eyes and say, "You deserve to know." But the worst part about betrayal is realizing it was never just one person. It was everyone who kept quiet and smiled like nothing was happening. The day after I saw the Instagram comment, I called her best friend, Sasha. She and Rena had been close since college, closer than I was ever fully comfortable with. Sasha always struck me as the type who liked to keep secrets, but pretended she was just protecting people's boundaries. I told myself I was being paranoid. That was becoming a pattern with me. "Sasha," I said the second she picked up, "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest." A pause. "Okay." "Was there ever something going on between Rena and Mason before this fight happened?" Silence. Not confusion, not denial, just hesitation. And that was all I needed. "You knew," I said, my voice going thin. "You knew, and you never told me." "It's not like that," she replied quickly. "I didn't know anything for sure. I just noticed some weird boundaries between them sometimes." Weird boundaries? What a polite way to say emotional affair in progress. "And you didn't think to mention that? Not once?" "It wasn't my place, Miles," she said, and that stung worse than if she had just said, "Yeah, I covered for her." Because in her mind, I was the problem. My pain was inconvenient for their little bubble of secrets and half-truths. I hung up. I didn't say goodbye. And then I started writing a list. Every lie, every shift in behavior, every work thing that didn't line up. I became obsessed, not in a healthy, healing way, in a way that drove me to dig through old photos, message timestamps, even our shared calendar. I couldn't believe how many red flags I had ignored. One night last fall, she told me she was working late, but I found a photo of her at a coworker's birthday dinner that same night. Mason's arm just barely visible around the back of her chair. It had been there the whole time, in plain sight. I just never looked closely enough. What destroyed me most wasn't the idea that she had feelings for someone else. It was how easily she let me rot in my own confusion, how she let me spiral, gaslight myself, doubt my own instincts, while she smiled, kissed me goodnight, and whispered I was just being sensitive. It was so smooth, so casual, I almost admired how practiced it all seemed. Almost. That night, I found myself texting her again. Not because I wanted her back, but because I wanted to see what kind of lie she'd reach for next. Me? Was Mason at the team dinner in October? The one at Charlie's? No reply for 2 hours. Then finally, Rena. "Why are you looking through old stuff? This isn't healthy, Miles." That was it. No answer. Just deflection. Like I was the one digging a hole when she was the one who buried me. 2 days later, I walked into my apartment and smelled his cologne. Not on purpose. Not like I went sniffing for it. It just hit me, instantly. A sharp, citrusy scent I didn't own, had never worn, and couldn't have imagined floating in my kitchen. My hands froze on the doorknob. I didn't move. I didn't even breathe for a few seconds. My first thought was, she's back. My second was worse. She brought him here. The place looked untouched, neat, almost staged, like someone had cleaned up in a hurry. But the scent lingered, faint but undeniable. And then I saw it. A black coffee mug on the counter that wasn't ours, sleek, minimal, with a stupid little sticker that read, "Let the hustle speak." Not mine, not hers. I stood there for a full minute just staring at it. It was one thing to lie, to text, to meet in secret bars or send flirty emojis and comment threads. But this was an invasion. He had been inside my space, my home, the apartment I paid for, the couch where I once held her after her mother died, the floor we danced on during a thunderstorm with the windows open. He had stepped into all of it, probably with his smug little grin, and I wasn't even worth a warning. I didn't even try to text her. What was the point? Instead, I grabbed the mug and dropped it in the trash. Then I pulled it back out, washed it, dried it, and set it gently in a drawer. I didn't do it because I was calm. I did it because I needed control over something, anything. Later that night, I got a text from an unknown number. Unknown. "Look, I didn't mean to disrespect your space. I just came by to drop off a charger she forgot." I stared at the screen in disbelief. Mason? It had to be. He had my number. He had my number. She gave it to him? Or maybe he dug it up, I don't know. But what rattled me most wasn't the intrusion. It was how casual the message was. Like he was texting a roommate about an Amazon package. I didn't respond. I couldn't. Because if I responded, I would have said something I'd regret. Or worse, something I wouldn't. The next morning, I went to a local coffee shop near her office. Not to confront anyone, just to sit, to think. But as fate would have it, I saw someone I recognized through the window, one of Rena's coworkers. A guy named Jonah who always looked half exhausted and fully uncomfortable in social situations. He was alone, typing something into his phone, and I don't know what came over me, but I walked in and sat across from him, like I had every right to. He looked up, startled. "Miles? Hi. Everything okay?" "No," I said, and to my surprise, my voice didn't shake. "You've been working with Rena for 3 years, right?" "Yeah." "Then you know about her and Mason." His eyes darted away. "I'm not here to fight," I added quickly. "I just want the truth, one piece of it, just one." Jonah exhaled through his nose and looked down at his coffee. "I didn't know how bad it was," he said after a pause. "At first it was harmless, flirting, jokes. Then meetings got longer. She started defending him in front of clients. It got weird. People noticed. We just didn't want to get involved." "You were involved," I said quietly. "Every time you said nothing, you helped her protect it." Jonah didn't argue. He didn't apologize either. He just sat there, ashamed. I stood to leave, but before I walked away, he said something I'll never forget. "She said you wouldn't understand, that you were too soft." I didn't turn around. I didn't need to. That word, soft, followed me out the door, stuck to me like smoke, and it changed something in me. I didn't expect it. There had been no warning, no message, not even one of her vague, just checking in texts. But there it was, that metallic click, then the soft creak of the front door swinging open like it always used to, as if she had every right to be here. I was sitting on the couch with a blanket over my lap, pretending to watch a documentary I couldn't remember the name of. I didn't move, just waited. She walked in like nothing had happened, like she hadn't slept elsewhere, like she hadn't defended another man in front of me, like she hadn't turned my world upside down and gone radio silent while I was left picking up pieces of a marriage I didn't break. "Hey," she said softly, almost like a question. Her voice carried that awkward warmth people use when they run into old friends in grocery stores. She looked thinner, tired, like she'd aged a little, but she still had that cool confidence in her eyes, the one she used when she wanted to take control of a room. "You're not supposed to be here," I said flatly, not taking my eyes off the screen. "I just wanted to grab a few things," she murmured, setting her keys on the counter. "Didn't think you'd be home." "I live here." She winced, just a flicker, but I saw it. Then she walked into the bedroom like she still knew the path by heart. I didn't stop her. I couldn't. I was too busy wondering if she would look at the closet and remember every weekend we spent trying to organize it by color, or if she'd glance at the bed and think about the time we watched bad movies all night after she'd bombed a work presentation, or if she'd even feel anything standing in the wreckage she caused. She came out 10 minutes later with a tote bag half full and avoided looking at me. "I'll come back for the rest later." I turned off the TV and finally met her eyes. "You could have told me it was him. You could have told me before you started disappearing emotionally. You owed me that much." She bit her bottom lip like she always did when she was caught. "It wasn't like that." "Then how was it?" She hesitated. "I don't know. It just happened. We were talking a lot. Things felt easy. You and we were always stressed lately. You were distant." "You mean quiet," I corrected. "I was quiet. There's a difference. You stopped asking me things. You stopped checking in. I didn't change. I just stopped trying to chase someone who was always somewhere else." Rena dropped her eyes to the floor. "I'm sorry you felt alone." That sentence snapped something in me. "No," I said, my voice sharp now. "You don't get to apologize for how I felt. You should be apologizing for what you did." She nodded slowly. "I'm not proud of it." "Then why did you walk in like nothing happened?" No answer. The silence felt like an earthquake, small on the surface, but everything under it was cracking. Then she sat down on the edge of the armrest, her voice suddenly lower. "I was hoping maybe we could talk. Really talk. You and me. Without yelling, without blaming." "Now?" I asked. "After you laughed at therapy in a comment thread? After you gave him my number and let him text me like we're buddies?" She closed her eyes. "I didn't mean for it to go this far." I stood up. Slowly. Deliberately. "You didn't mean for it to go this far? Or you didn't think I'd notice that it had?" She didn't respond. She just stood, adjusted the strap of her tote bag, and stepped toward the door. "I'll text you before I come next time." "You won't need to." She paused. "What does that mean?" It means I'm filing tomorrow, I said without emotion. This place is yours now. You already took everything else. The paperwork sat in a manila folder on the coffee table for 3 days before I signed it. Not because I was having second thoughts, those were long gone, but because I wanted her to feel the silence between us, stretched to the point where it snapped on its own. I didn't text her, didn't check her socials, didn't ask mutual friends if she was okay. I just existed, quietly, like a ghost waiting for someone to realize he never truly left. On the fourth morning, I walked into the bedroom to gather some final things. Old clothes, books, a framed photo I couldn't stand to look at anymore. And that's when I noticed something odd. A shoebox on her side of the closet. Not hidden, not buried, just there. I almost ignored it, but something in me, call it wounded pride or toxic curiosity, made me reach for it. Inside was a mess of things I didn't expect. Birthday cards from me, old concert tickets, Polaroids from a beach trip years ago. There were little sticky notes I'd left for her. The kind you forget you even wrote. The kind you assume get tossed the moment you're out the door. And then, near the bottom, folded neatly into quarters, was a letter. No envelope, no name on the outside. Just folded white paper. I shouldn't have read it, but I did. It wasn't to me. It was to him. Mason, I hate that this is so complicated. I hate that it feels so good to be near you and so terrible to walk back through that door. He's not a bad person. He just doesn't see me anymore. Or maybe I disappeared before he even noticed. You make me feel awake, and that scares me. But I don't want to stop. I read it 3 times. The paper trembled in my hand. My stomach twisted, not from rage. I was far past that. But from the realization that she had written this while she was still here. She wasn't just drifting away, she was already gone, and she had left a trail of words behind like breadcrumbs for me to eventually choke on. She wrote to him, but never to me. That was the part I couldn't shake. I wanted to throw the letter in the fireplace, burn it, bury it, erase it from my memory, but I didn't. I folded it, placed it back inside the box, and set the whole thing by the door. Then I picked up my phone and called my attorney. I'm ready, I said. Let's file it. She didn't respond to the filing email until 2 days later. Rena, I got the documents. I wasn't expecting you to move this fast. Me, I found the letter. There was no reply, not even the bubble that shows someone's typing, just nothing. And for once, that silence wasn't mine to carry. Later that night, I took one last walk through the apartment. It felt smaller somehow, like it had been shrinking with every day she chose him over us. I ran my fingers across the kitchen counter where we used to share late-night ice cream. I glanced at the window where we'd once sat and watched thunderstorms together. It felt ridiculous. How ordinary heartbreak looked in daylight. No flashing signs, no screaming. Just shadows where connection used to live. But I wasn't broken anymore. Worn down, yes, but not broken. And when I placed the signed papers in the envelope and dropped them in the mailbox that night, I didn't hesitate. Not for a second. The morning after mailing the divorce papers, I woke up to something unfamiliar. Stillness, but not the kind that screams loneliness. It was the kind that finally felt earned, like a deep exhale after holding your breath for too long. For the first time in months, the silence wasn't filled with suspicion, with wondering where she was or who she was texting. It was just quiet, peaceful, mine. I made coffee without rushing, sat on the balcony and let the sun hit my face. There were no unread messages, no drama, no mental math about who knew what and when. It was just a normal Tuesday, and yet everything had changed. I wasn't the man curled on the floor anymore, replaying every conversation, trying to spot the moment she stopped choosing me. I had let go of needing that answer. That afternoon, I met up with my younger sister at a bookstore downtown. She'd been checking in on me every other day, always offering more support than I deserved. As we sat across from each other with matching cups of peppermint tea, she said something I hadn't expected. "You look like you're coming back." I smiled quietly. "Feels like it." And it did. Not because I was magically healed or because the pain vanished overnight, but because I stopped making excuses for someone who wouldn't even apologize. I stopped trying to build a bridge to someone who had already burned the blueprint. And in that empty space she left behind, I found things I'd forgotten. My own rhythm, my own humor, even my own dreams. A week later, I bought new bed sheets. Something simple, soft, but different. Symbolic, maybe. I rearranged the living room, gave away the wine glasses we never used. Even adopted a senior dog named Bowie who follows me from room to room like he's afraid I'll disappear. Ironic, isn't it? After all this, I'm the one finally being followed. As for Rena, we haven't spoken since the papers were filed. No grand apology, no plea to fix things, just silence. And for once, I didn't fill it with fantasy. I let it be. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can say isn't a speech or a scream. It's nothing at all. I don't know what comes next. I'm not rushing to date, not jumping into some new distraction to prove something. I'm just learning how to exist again, to show up for myself the way I kept begging someone else to. And honestly, that's more than enough for now. Thank you for listening to my story here on Reddit Confessions.